Hi, welcome to the Coaching Leader podcast. We're glad that you could tune in, whether it's by video or by audio on iTunes, Google Podcast, Stitcher, or Overcast. And we're excited about some of the upcoming guests that we're going to have, but we're especially pleased today to welcome the Rev Bart Day, President and CEO of Lutheran Church Extension Fund. Hi, Bart. How are you?
Good afternoon, Scott. Thank you for having me today. It's great to be with you.
It's wonderful to be with you. You're so gracious in allowing us to record an interview with you. I know you've got lots of things cooking, but you have quite a history and a resume from pastor to headmaster to working with the entire synod, and now being president and CEO of Lutheran Church Extension Fund. Could you share a little bit about your journey and how you got to be in this role?
Absolutely. I will jokingly say at the beginning that most everything I've done is what the seminary did not prepare me to do.
That's why we're here.
But the church has graciously invited and asked me, and they've endured with me. So yeah, I was born and raised in rural southern Illinois. Decided to go off to school to Concordia Teachers College in those days in Nebraska. And I was preparing for church work, preparing to be a pastor, although I wasn't totally sure that that's what I wanted to do. I kicked around the idea of being a social worker or something too, but then ended up going to the seminary right out of college, and had a great seminary experience and certainly learned a lot, as we all do.
Sure.
And thought I would get called to probably a rural parish somewhere. Never imagined that I would be sent to the megalopolis of Houston, Texas. Had really never been to Houston in my life before I packed up all my belongings. And my new bride, typical seminarian, find her on vicarage, get married a week after graduation, then pack up and go to your first call. And so I had a large church and a school. And so was kind of immediately put into a large parish setting with lots of responsibilities. I was serving as the associate pastor and had a wonderful Lutheran school there. And so found my way into kind of helping and teaching and working in the Lutheran school right away. And so I ended up spending 14 years at Memorial, both at the church and the school. But as you said, I was working with the school a little bit and then working with the school a whole lot. And we had a blue ribbon task force looking at the future of the school and challenges, and we identified several opportunities really to strengthen the bonds between the church and school. And at that point in time, right as we were launching into that, our principal took a call to the other side of Houston, to the high school, and we were kind of left pretty shorthanded right at the summer. And they said, "Oh, Pastor Day, you've done so much with the church and the school. We think you should just step in and be the head of the school." I said, "No, this is not probably what you want me to do." And they all just gave me a lot of encouragement and asked me to do it. And I thought it would probably be a pretty short time thing. We entered the call process the next year and just had difficulty finding anyone to serve as the head of our Lutheran school. And so what began, I think, just this kind of a short-term opportunity ended up really being kind of permanent place for me. And so I really love school administration. I kind of threw myself into school administration, stepped away after a period of a couple of years from the regular rotation of serving as an associate pastor. In fact, the church called another pastor. I called another pastor to work with me in the school to help with administrative and teaching responsibilities. And so started on a master's degree in administrative education and just kind of loved the school life. And it was a big shift, though. A lot of people in the congregation didn't understand that shift. They wondered, many people wondered why I sort of left ministry, the school thing.
Yeah.
And I assured them that the ability to mold and shape young minds was far more exciting to me than old staunchy Lutherans who were grouchy about everything and didn't listen. And our school was serving children from like 15 to 20 countries. The majority of them were not Lutheran. Many of them were not Christian. They had no connection to the gospel at all. And so it was a huge mission field. And the school was very intentional in really cultivating that and working that and making that church school connection. So I loved it. But again, was not what I was really kind of trained to do and had to take over finances and all those kind of things. Then was asked to come to St. Louis after the 2010 convention, where there was a restructuring of the LCMS.
Yeah.
So I came to St. Louis in 2011 to oversee the domestic work of the LCMS, and that was pulling about 14 programmatic ministries from all over Extended Inc. into one new department. And that was a very exciting time because it was an opportunity to kind of create something from scratch that was brand new. I think they wanted a pastor in that role. They wanted somebody who loved schools in that role, had worked with youth and any number of kind of mercy endeavors over the years. So that was a great opportunity. And so was able to be a part of that and really loved it. And but I had other interim jobs during that time. I did pastoral education for a little while during the interim, and I was even my own boss for a while. I served as the chief mission officer for a while. It was great when I was my own boss. I rarely told myself,
That's
"Oh,
right.
a lot of great ideas." I supported myself, but there was an opportunity maybe to be the CMO, but I really didn't want to do that because I felt like it was a further step. It was very difficult for me to leave just parish. And I was still parish when I was in school, but coming to the bureaucratic work of Synod was a long way away. But I felt like I had an opportunity to impact ministries and churches and schools in their work kind of all over the country when I was at Synod. Felt like becoming the chief mission officer would just be a further step away from that. So I loved that role and served there for about 6 years. And then really out of the blue, I was nominated and encouraged to consider Lutheran Church Extension Fund. I thought, I'm not a bank. I mean, I don't know, run a financial institution. But I was really kind of encouraged and mentored by several people that the board was looking for some specific skill sets and abilities in the next CEO, and that they thought that I had some of those qualities. And so I was in that process and really did not think I would be selected or asked to serve at LCEF, but I was, and it's been a tremendous ride. I went back to school and finished my MBA that I had started a little bit earlier, but jumped full time into a program while I've been at LCEF, and so picked up some other technical skills and acumen that I think served me well here. But yeah, I've done a lot of things that the church didn't really prepare me to do from the parish, but beyond the parish. But I do think being a parish pastor and having that perspective has served me very, very well in all of these roles. And the opportunities for leadership been very graciously opened to me by others. So the Lord has been good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Being prepared as a pastor helps out in so many ways, doesn't it?
It does.
But on the other hand, as you mentioned, sometimes we find ourselves as pastors sitting in meetings and doing things, and we're kind of scratching our heads going, I'm going to kind of see where this goes because I don't know. I'm not quite prepared. So what kind of leadership lessons did you learn along the way? What have been some keys to leadership that you've picked up on?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's good. I've made a list in preparation. I think that if I were to share with people kind of keys to leadership, and this would, I think, could be at whatever level that you are. People are certainly asked to lead from the middle and lead from the top and all over the place.
Sure.
For me, I think first you have to lead by example. You should not ask people to do anything that you yourself are not willing to do. Mm-hmm. You have to, as a leader, be willing to work very, very hard. I always tease people and say, they talk about retirement and resting and all this stuff. And I say, I'll rest at the time of the new heaven and the new earth. And until then, this ain't a 40-hour-a-week job. So I think leading by example and doing things, to support the organization are significant. Wherever you are leading, people will notice your own work ethic and your sort of how much are you really giving to the mission, vision, core values of the organization. You have to live that and breathe that. And people have to see that in a very genuine way from you as a leader.
Yeah, certainly have to set the tone, don't you? It
Absolutely.
says a lot. If you say one thing and there's some incongruence, boy, that's tough. But
if you're disingenuous and not real, people will sniff that out immediately.
Yeah.
I also think that You cannot micromanage people. The leader is not actually doing the work. They are creating the environment and the culture in which that work actually is taking place. And so do not micromanage people. You need to clear the weeds. That's kind of my phrase. What can I do to clear the weeds to allow you to succeed within this kind of environment? So I think the leader has the responsibility to set the environment, not to micromanage people.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that you have to hire people that are smarter than you, people who have a tremendous amount of drive. And I think you should actually hire people who someday want to have your job. My father always said that if you're the smartest guy in the room, you are in the wrong room. You should surround yourself with people who don't think like you, who think much broader than you, have a very different perspective than you. And I think you have to hire people that have drive, that really want to succeed. I think in the non-for-profit world, a part of that is that you have to be able to clearly articulate what is the mission of the organization, what is the long-term vision, what are core values that set you apart, what are the sort of from the board level, what are the targets that you are driving towards. So don't be afraid. Yeah, go ahead.
I really appreciate you saying that last part because I don't think it's uncommon to say, don't micromanage, but you added sort of the other bumper on the other side, that at the same time it doesn't mean that you should macro manage either. In other words, disappear. But I appreciate what you said. You need to communicate mission, vision, values. And with that, you're staying in touch with people about what's important. And so you're not just distancing yourself and saying, you go do it, you're smart. But it's a nice marriage of leader to followers to team. So appreciate that very much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And not being threatened by the other person's wisdom. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's I think that's important for the leader. I think you have to love people. You have to love your people. That means you have to know them. You have to appreciate them. You have to build relationships with those people. That means you have to be willing to laugh with them and cry with them. I think that's where pastors have kind of a unique ability in sort of pastoral care. Even when you're sort of the CEO of the church's financial institution, I think those things are important. A wise leader once told me, if you want people to follow you, you must let them know you. But he went on to say that if you want people to follow you in the midst of crisis and challenge, you have to let them love you. A leader has to have some level of openness and vulnerability, and that probably has to do with being open to kind of failure and then actually acknowledging that and then learning from the failure. If we talk about innovation, that's a huge thing. These catch like fail fast. You need to fail often, fail fast, learn. Don't allow failure to slow things down. Don't let it hamper or hinder moving ahead. But you have to learn, and then you have to go again. So I think loving people, and that means loving everyone in your organization. As the president and CEO, do you actually know the people who like clean the building and like are in and out of your office all the time? Do you know those people by name? Do you appreciate them? I think that goes around sort of the culture. And, there's a lot written today, Scott, around that people want to work at an organization where there is a higher purpose and a higher value. Certainly many of the professionals who work at LCEF, only about 20% of people who work here at LCMS, most of them are Christian. These are businessmen and women. They could go to other organizations and probably make more money doing the same kind of work that they're doing here. But they want to do it here because they understand there's a purpose and a value in their daily vocation is actually impacting ministry. Our vision is growing ministry opportunity. They know that no matter what they're doing here, there is an end result that is tangible in the proclamation of the gospel to the ends of the earth. And part of that as a leader is you can't only create that environment, but you have to let people see that. So you have to either for us, we have to bring ministries into this building and let them talk to people. We have to get people out of this building at all levels to actually see what's happening. That, I may just be processing your investment, or I may just be underwriting your loan, but like this loan is like a real live activity that is impacting a community with the gospel. And so I think, for a leader to do that and allow his organization to see and live that is critical. I think the other big thing for leadership is that the leader has to be willing to evaluate themselves. I love Korn Ferry. I think everybody should have a 360. I think this is important. I think peers need to evaluate you. But I think in your organization, you need to allow a lot of input and evaluation from your employees. We do a lot of pulse surveys around here, quick things. First, we're going to ask people, you better be willing to listen and you better be willing to change. But again, creating that culture where there is accountability to the mission, vision, core values, targets, because people do need to be measured. They need to be held accountable to the task they're doing. But if you can make them sort of reach and stretch beyond sort of larger aspirational goals of an organization, particularly like within the church or a non-for-profit, I think that's where people really just bring a huge amount of value. And being a leader in that kind of an organization is a lot of fun. I love my job every single day. I love the people who I'm here serving with. I love what we're doing. And I like to think that we have an environment where people love that and appreciate that too.
And that's what'll keep them there. Feeling loved, enjoying their work, seeing that it's for a higher purpose. And it's like, I don't care so much about the salary, but I'm making a difference here and I'm appreciated.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. What's the old saying? People don't quit their jobs, they quit their managers, or something like that.
That is the oddity of the church world and working at LCEF. I don't, no illusions here. LCEF is not the church. We're not doing ministry. But yet we are of the church, and the church expects us to provide services in a certain way that's different than a sort of ordinary financial institution. And yet we're working within real lives, sort of a regulatory environment and their expectations. So the church, I think, oftentimes in those straddled business type endeavors and adventures, it does add a layer of complexity, but it also adds a huge opportunity for the church's voice to be heard in those places. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's a wonderful list. In the last number of years, it seems like, or months, it seems like with this pandemic and the lockdowns, et cetera, so much has just been brought back to zero, that we're all starting new. What kind of leadership is needed in this kind of environment for innovation and creativity, would you say?
That's a great question. And I agree that right now, as people are worried about how they will come out of the economic downturn, I mean, organizations, agencies, businesses, churches, I think everyone's they're feeling the need to change, to pivot. They're not quite sure where to go. And we are hearing an awful lot of buzz about, what role does creativity play, or what about innovation? And LCF has been talking about this for about the past year. Our board has set some pretty aggressive growth goals for LCF. They would like to see LCF double over the next 5 years, both our total assets and our net assets. LCF is now a $2 billion organization. So you're talking going to $4 billion, with the purpose of our growth will be able to actually drive growth in the church. We'll actually be able to support more opportunity for the gospel throughout the church. So a lot of conversation around that. If I were to give you kind of my tidbits and my sound bites, principles for leading in an innovative environment, and things I've learned over the years, I wrote down the list, so I didn't forget them. I thought these were good to talk about. The first one is called combining and pitching. It is a very effective way to innovate. What do I mean? That not everything that you do that's innovative needs to be brand new. Oftentimes, great innovation, Scott, will occur if you actually just combine things that already exist, but perhaps in ways that you never thought about combining them together. So you should never overlook what you already have. Some churches and schools and ministries freak out that I have to do something that's completely foreign to me. No, look at what you have, evaluate what you have, and then How might you hitch it to something that's of greater value or more effective? The next thing I would say is, in an innovative, creative environment, you have to create more. And I think actually volume matters. Even when what you create is bad, you need to allow people a safe environment to attempt and attempt and attempt. Fail fast, fail often. The most creative people in the world, we know because they've written their own books, they failed multiple times before they ever did that one really creative, successful thing. So you need to always learn from the failure. You need to retool. You need to morph and change into something else, but you always have to be, I think, pushing forward if you really want that innovation to be a part of your culture.
Your first online service is not going to be Hollywood quality, so just relax, get it done.
Call my friend Phil Grimpo at Inspira Media. I'll give him a shout out here. He'll help you with your online, but yeah, you're going to have some trouble and growing pains along the way. I also think that if you're going to create, like in an organization, that kind of environment, you have to make sure that your reward system, that you set up your reward system to punish inactivity, but not to ever punish failure, even defiance to the way you have always done things. So if you want to be a conformist, it's not consistent with being a leader in an innovative or a kind of driven organization. In an innovative environment, you cannot punish failure. You cannot punish defiance. It's simply impossible to generate a few good ideas without generating 1,000 really horrible ideas. Creativity is oftentimes the function of the quantity of work, not the quality. You see this with places like Disney and others. They create things over and over and over and over again in huge volume, and then throw them away, and then sometimes come back to them later. So you can't punish inactivity. You got to tell people, get out there and do it. Or I'm saying basically punish the inactive unwillingness to actually fail, and don't and create environments where people can somewhat defy typical boundaries and other kind of things.
Yeah, so often, our teammates, our board members, our coworkers, our fellow church members are kind of like Monday morning quarterbacks, and want to cross their arms and say, "I told you it wouldn't work," rather than saying, "Hey, good job, you gave it a try. What did we learn? Where can we do better?"
Before something works, there'll be 100 iterations that won't. So, I mean, this is part of being a lifelong learner, which I think is part of that innovative environment. You have people who want to continually learn, grow, change, morph. Never just say that the status quo, even if the status quo is successful, doesn't matter. Doesn't mean it's going to continue to work into the future. The other thing, Scott, I would say is you have to always, figuring like a business, you need to shelter creative work. It can be very fragile and it can be easily lost. I always say you have to keep your most creative people away from your biggest customers, because all those customers want is they just want more of the same widget at a cheaper price. So keep your most creative people away from critics or anyone whose primary concern is money. If the primary driver is money, you're not going to be creative. Remember, innovation is not instant perfection. It's a very high-speed process of continual failure, learning, and recreating again. That leads to the next one. You would have to hire people who you don't actually have a need for today. And this is difficult in a budget crunching time. Innovation demands a lot of very diverse viewpoints, which sometimes we don't always appreciate in the church too. I'm not encouraging somebody who disagrees with us on the core content of the gospel and the sacraments.
Sure.
Talking to the larger scope here, but oftentimes what we see just depends on our observation. And so if you want to keep seeing things the same way, then just keep asking the same people to answer the same question. If you want something new, I think you really got to find outside people. You got to have diverse eyes and ears, people who will see things very different from the status quo. So hire people that you don't really maybe think that you have a need for. And a part of that too is you have to create what I would call slack. You have to give people time outside of their regular work routine to actually be creative. When I worked across the street at Synod, I instituted what was called the Genius Hour. And for 1 hour a week, all of my employees were to completely disconnect from work and participate in something that they actually enjoyed that gave them opportunity just to think more broadly about their work. So allow people to hook onto something that they love and give them slack to be creative. Um, the last couple, innovation will challenge us to always discard our well accepted assumptions and our rules of truth. Um, it's especially hard because we all work by the rules, especially inside the church, and we like to think alike. And in some ways that's good, and in some ways we will always hamper creativity and innovation. Innovation, I think, really the best innovation in business always breaks the rules. Innovation dares to work outside the paradigms based on assumptions, even when those paradigms and assumptions work in the past. It should not be complacency to believe that that's just going to happen in the future. And the last one is that a big mob of people is always better than one lone genius. And this is the danger for any of us. The more that we know, the more we become a subject matter expert, the more we actually stand in the way of innovation. And so I think that's important for a leader. You're not going to have all the innovative ideas. Again, you're creating a culture, an environment where this can happen. You're giving people slack. You're allowing them to work outside the boundaries. You're creating space for them. You're not tying their innovation to certain rewards, not tying it to money as far as controlling like company and direction. So those are the things that I would say. And I think they're especially important now as the church is trying to figure out what does the church look like in the world kind of post the pandemic. What will the world look like? Will there be a normal, or is there going to be a new normal? How does the church work and function in all of that? And so at LCF, I think we're thinking that things are going to change. I mean, the church has been simply declining, kind of butts in the pew. Number of congregations in the LCMS has been declining for the last couple of decades. Yeah. And that doesn't seem to be coming to an end anytime soon. So for an organization that has typically provided, place and space, brick and mortar, when people aren't really reading traditional place and space and maybe don't need so much brick and mortar, at least not for worship, maybe to engage their community, how does LCF find new ways to generate dollars or new ways to support ministries that are creative and innovative? So we're kind of in a balance, Scott, where, we want to help the church lead, but we don't want to do the leading for the church. We want to be there to respond to what the ministries are actually experiencing on the ground, but assure that they have financial and other ministry support services that can help them in their work.
Well, it sounds like you're living out some of the things that you've just talked about with providing that environment for other people to do well. And that seems to be so important. What I hear you saying is blessing other people in their efforts, encouraging them, granting and giving them permission to try and explore and experiment. That's really, really rich. Well, when we were talking on the phone earlier, you had mentioned that you had experienced coaching, and could you just share a little bit about what that's been like for you and what's been helpful for you in terms of being coached and what you know about coaching?
Sure. And you and I have not talked about this, so I might have a different view, but I think there is a difference between coaching and being mentored or a mentor. I have a lot of mentors in life. I mean, sometimes they're colleagues and people who maybe for the longer view, at least for me, the mentor is more sort of not maybe so much about what you're doing, but sort of who you are intrinsically and the type of person and values that you have, and you shape and model yourself after these mentors. For me, coaching has been very, very specific. It has been, a coach is kind of, they're running the team. I mean, they are like setting the play. They may not go in and actually execute, but they are with you. So for me, when I've had coaches, it's been around very specific sort of circumstance, inviting them to the table to really listen to what's going on and to help me think strategically about things, to actually offer possible solutions. So it's been very different than being mentored, because it's been, for me, that coaching has been very specific around opportunities or work that had to be done and really valuing that person. So some of them I would say were coaches, some of them were consultants. And for me, sometimes that kind of blurs a line. I mean, I know there is some difference, but Consultants kind of in the same way, to bring them in as really valued partners that, you expect them to really listen and offer up solutions and create game plans and strategy and say, here's kind of the play that I would run. This is what I would encourage you to do. As the leader, then I think you have to decide whether you do that or what it looks like. But with a coach, I think you should be transparent enough not to hide from them all of the obstacles along the way. If you want to, if you want a consultant to be worthless, tell them only half of the reality of the situation and then ask for their, consulting advice. I mean, you got to be willing to be very open and transparent and believe that a coach adds value that you yourself don't have. And that, I think, is an important trait in a leader. I think a leader better be pretty humble, and they better be willing to say that they don't have all the answers. They may be great problem solvers. They should be willing to bring other people in alongside to help them think strategically through particularly big decisions that are the large scale. And that's where I've found the coaching to be really, really most useful. So I had somebody who I would say legitimately coached me in those early days when I over a Lutheran school and I had no idea how to be a school administrator. And right out of the gate, we had accreditation. It was like the 7-year cycle. And I'm now the head of the school, and accreditation is going to come for a visit in 9 months. What the heck did I know about curriculum? How was I going to be ready for this? And I had somebody who really came in and coached. And likewise, when I came to LCF, I had somebody who I think really was a coach. And I had consultants too that really sat down and helped me work through what does it look like leading a $2 billion financial institution that is uniquely an institution of the church, serving the church. And how do you think through making those decisions and how you lead? So I think coaching is valuable.
Yeah, I really appreciate you talking about the honesty and vulnerability to get the most out of coaching. And that's actually one of the first core competencies of a coach. The International Coaching Federation talks about creating that environment of trust with the people that you're working with, so that you can kind of feel safe talking about where you're scared, where you're worried, where you're what you're afraid of, and being able to get to that place where you can get down to what's really most important. As you say, that's a great word and a great encouragement. Well, you've said a lot in the last 25 minutes or so. Is there something else that you'd like to share with us as we start wrapping up? Kind of a final word, or maybe you can even just tell us a little bit about LCEF.
I'm happy to tell you about LCEF. We're yeah. a little over 40 years old now, and we are the financial arm to provide financial resource and other attendant ministry resources, which we're the only real corporate entity that's asked to do that piece of it. So we have ministry support that does a lot with congregations and ministries, but everyone primarily knows LCEF for providing the financial resources. So, it's a real simple model. It's been around for a long time. People are, very gracious and trusting, and place their money on deposit at LCEF for us to pay them interest. And then we take those dollars and invest them back in the church in low-cost loans to support churches and schools and districts and ministries, and then also rostered church workers, because we provide mortgages to our rostered church workers. So that really small little kind of start 40 years ago when the district CEF started, coming together, is now just this past year becomes a $2 billion organization. So it's a great blessing that the church is able to provide this kind of financial support and really to be a financial provider, unlike a traditional kind of commercial bank. I mean, that we really care about the ministry. We're able to kind of see that. And particularly when times become tough, like we are during the pandemic, LCEF is, we made augmentation to probably about 250 loans for about $350 million. And we, deferred probably $1.6 billion worth of payments over the last several months. I mean, we're able to kind of bear with our ministry partners when there's problems and troubles that a typical banking institution just is not able to do. And when they have challenges, we're able to come in and hopefully offer them some unique help and perspective and support, financial and otherwise, because we believe that we know our borrowers best. We are part of the church, so we understand who they are and what they do and some of the challenges they face. So So LCF is really a unique blessing to the church. And again, we hope that through our kind of growth over the next 3, 4, 5 years, that will mean there's even greater resources available to the church.
That's wonderful. I appreciate LCF and appreciate your leadership and what you've shared today. How can people get in touch with you if they listen to this and wanted to reach out?
Yeah, I'd say the best way is always just send me an email. It's real easy, bart.day at lcef.org. Or you can always give me a call on the phone, 314-885-6300 is the direct line into my office. And if you're on Facebook, I'm on there. You can drop me a question or an instant message, whatever. But I'm always happy to hear from people and talk to folks across the church. I tend to travel a lot and make it out, into churchly events, but for the last 6 months, it's been pretty much just locked down here in St. Louis. We'll look forward to the day when we can be back out visiting ministries again.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great to be with you.
Well, we want to thank Bart Day for sharing with us some wonderful wisdom on leadership and telling us some of his journey. Especially during this pandemic, it's an uncertain and unusual time. Yet it's a time filled with opportunity for those who can take advantage of it. And if you're new to leadership or you're facing leadership challenges where you aren't sure of the exact direction where you need to go, reach out to me. Our specialty is leadership coaching, helping people to explore and discover their next intentional steps to lead their people and organizations forward, to experience more health, more joy, and productivity, both personally and as a ministry or organization. Our website is scottgress.com, and our email is scottgress@me.com. So thanks for listening, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time on The Coaching Leader.